as well today. And for all the folks out there watching and joining us this evening, thank you so much for staying engaged and remaining educated and informed citizens as we approach Election Day 2020, in 56 days. So real quick, my name is Mujtaba Mohammed. I proudly serve Charlotte, Mecklenburg in the North Carolina State Senate, representing Senate District 38. Senate District 38 specifically under the new maps after our court-ordered redistricting, now will go from Northeast, the university area, all of Uptown, South End, Noda, Dilworth is the new Senate district. Just to share a little bit about myself for the folks out there who don't know me, I'm so honored and privileged to have been a public servant for a number of years, a proud product of Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, myself in the UNC system, a proud graduate of North Carolina Central University School of Law, where I have learned and been committed to the commitment of truth and service, just like our legal eagles are all taught at North Carolina Central University School of Law and HBCU. Following my time at the law school, thankfully I got an opportunity to come back home here to Charlotte, where I grew up. I got the opportunity to work at the Council for Children's Rights, representing underserved children and families in our court system. Really enjoyed that type of advocacy in the courtroom and in the schoolrooms. From there, I've been a trial attorney at the Mecklenburg County Public Defender's Office, still representing indigent and underserved individuals. And from there, we've been able to take our advocacy from the courtroom to the committee room of the North Carolina Senate and the floor of the North Carolina Senate. I will tell you one of the biggest reasons that I decided to step up and run for public office is because when you are on the other side of the criminal justice system, where you're representing indigent individuals, when you've represented children that have been through so much trauma, and so many different type of crises in their lives, you begin to realize that we need to make sure we're creating a lot more solutions to help folks instead of putting band-aids on people's problems. For me, when I began to see time and time again, following young people as young as, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in our criminal justice system, from the school to prison pipeline into the adult criminal justice system, where now grown men are standing next to me in orange jumpsuits, that's an issue for me. And for me, I've always been not necessarily about a big government or a small government, but an effective government, a good government that works for all people. So one of the fundamental values that I hold to heart is making sure we commit to justice reform in North Carolina. I truly and genuinely believe that we need to invest in people, and that's how we build people instead of prisons. Supporting a quality public education for all of our children. I genuinely believe that your zip code should determine where your mail goes, not your future. Your race shouldn't determine your future. Your socioeconomic status shouldn't determine your future. So we've got to support strong public schools. In a place like North Carolina, where we still have 1 million people uninsured, we've got to do more to make sure we expand access to healthcare to all people. Quality, affordable access to healthcare, protecting our environment, our air, and our water. These are some of the fundamental core issues that I deeply, deeply care about. And I'm so honored and privileged to serve in the North Carolina Senate. I'm going into my second term for the good people of Senate District 38 send me back. We're so honored and privileged to have received a number of endorsements, whether it's from amazing organizations like the Black Political Caucus time and time again, to our educators with the North Carolina Association of Educators, to the folks in our labor movement with the North Carolina AFL-CIO. So proud of our representation in Raleigh and continuing to do this amazing work for the good people of Senate District 38.
Great. Now, it's so interesting that you spoke of criminal justice reform. So when you look at a lot of the issues that have been going on, you look at a lot of things that, the city of Charlotte have been, experiencing with a lot of the issues with officer involved, shootings and just other issues. So when you speak of reform, what are some of the things that you look at that we need to reform in, the criminal justice system?
Look, Meko, that's a wonderful question, and it's an issue that we're seeing time and time again. For me, like I told you, when we see the basic consequences of when we don't have budgets that don't reflect our values, right? When we look at how big of a game changer universal pre-K can be for every single child. The reality is not every child has the opportunities and privileges that some other children do. So that's where government's got to step up and give people those opportunities, right? Safe housing, a good neighborhood to live in, a good school, opportunities like universal pre-K to make sure we're helping young people become productive members of our society. But at the same time, there are unfortunately folks who've been in and out of the criminal justice system. And because of my time as a public interest attorney, I mean, that's one of my areas that I'm so passionate about. And because of my work, I'm proud to tell you I'm the only representative of the North Carolina Senate who was appointed by Governor Cooper to the task force on racial equity in the justice system. I mean, some of the things we're looking at right there is making sure we're pushing for duty to intervene, right? Banning things like chokeholds. We're looking at things like how the ability to pay fines and fees literally paralyze people because we criminalize poverty, essentially. I'm part of the working group on the task force. We're directly looking at our courthouse stakeholders like prosecutors' offices, public defenders, our judicial offices, making sure that they get things like implicit bias training. Because I can tell you, as someone that works in public interest law, that's grueling work. It's grueling work. You see people with so many challenges day in, day out. And we want to make sure that folks never lose sight of the work that they've committed to doing, whether prosecutors, whether they're public defenders, or whether they're judges. Yes, it's important to keep our communities safe, but at the same time, we've got to build people, not prisons. That's what I say time and time again. So we're looking at things like the Second Chance Act, which I'm so proud to have sponsored in my first term in the North Carolina Senate. I know, Meko, you came to the North Carolina General Assembly. We had so many great friends like you and so many other great folks from Charlotte, Mecklenburg show up and rally and advocate for the Second Chance Act. Nobody should have to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars to get a second chance at life. This means the difference between being able to move into your next home, the difference being to move into your next apartment or to purchase a car or your next job. I mean, how often are people wrongfully accused of crimes and now because of that accusation simply, now they can't get jobs? I mean, that's absolutely a disgrace. So we've modernized our court system with the passage of the Second Chance Act, where people can now get automatic expunctions when their criminal charges are dismissed, for example, either by the state or at trial. That's going to be a huge game changer. And the great thing about that, because criminal justice issues shouldn't be either Republican or Democratic issues or right or left issues, they're right or wrong issues. And it's great to see folks from both sides of the aisle coming together and working together towards solutions. Now, we still have a lot more work to do, I'll tell you, right? We've got to make sure the police aren't policing themselves, for example, right? We've got to be able to create independent commissions and organizations that are policing the police. At the same time, we've got to support good police officers because the reality is not all police officers are bad people. So we've got to use those amazing police officers that are leaders within their departments or within their branches or within their precincts and use those folks as role models for new police officers. We've got to get rid of bad police officers. We've got to do things like where we're having active giglio committees where prosecutors' offices are actively looking at bad police officers and making sure we're notifying criminal defense attorneys and defendants of, look, this is a bad police officer and this police officer shouldn't be in the courtroom. The things that come out of this police report, out of this officer's police report, or the things that come out of his mouth shouldn't be trusted. So those are the types of things that we can continue to do to make sure that we have more fair opportunities. I mean, implicit bias training is one of the biggest things that I'm looking at. I think we need to have mandatory implicit bias training because the reality is people do harbor their individual prejudices and sometimes they don't even realize it. So if we have mandatory implicit bias trainings, whether it's from police officers, whether it's public defenders or judges and prosecutors, that's going to help make a better criminal justice system. We've got to do more things like raise the age, where I started my legal career representing children. Like, how much longer are we going to continue to treat Black and brown children as monsters? And the reality is, when you look at places like North Carolina, Meko, you know this, African Americans make up almost what 54% of the a quarter of the population. Well, you're almost 54% of the folks that are incarcerated. And those same numbers parallel our school to prison pipeline when it comes to school suspension rates. So we've got to be able to reform those school suspension rates as well to make sure that we're giving kids second chances so they can learn, so they can thrive in an educational classroom. We've got to have elected officials who aren't determining a child's future based on our prison populations, right? We've got to make sure we have more equity when it comes to public education and how we score our schools. Instead of having realtors push people into more affluent parts of the county or the city. So there's a whole host of number of reforms that we can do. I'm excited to be on that task force. I would tell you, Meko, if you or Ms. Henderson or anybody has any great suggestions for the task force report, please reach out to me. You can Google me on the North Carolina Senate website, shoot us an email. Let's continue these conversations. Let's push aggressive, bold agenda.
Yeah, I actually got on one of the speak out sessions.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, and one of my biggest issues I know when we're looking at the reform, I've actually sent a few people through the clemency department. And
Mhm.
one of the issues that I had when they spoke with the clerk at the clemency department, she will redirect anybody to say that if it's anything that you're trying to say that is racially profiling or discrimination, don't put it on there because they're not going to hear it. So that was their take maybe a year ago. So when you're looking at a lot of people that have went through the clemency department and have been told, and that may have actually 100% been the fact that they were racially discriminated against, and now they're saying don't put that on there because that's not a good look. Are
Yeah.
they going to go back and revisit a lot of those clemencies that came through there, that those situations were dealing with officers that, abused the power?
Well, Miko, look, thank you for bringing up that point and sharing that. I mean, this is what constituent relations is about. This is what it's about getting in the community. Unfortunately, times under COVID have changed, and I miss, being able to see you and giving you a hug and
Oh,
having these, community conversations in person. But now we're having these virtual conversations, but it's so great to have these platforms. So as an elected official, I'm hearing the issues that you're hearing, right? So we can take these back to the decision makers. So we can talk about, look, these are real issues. Look, at the end of the day, people need to consider race and the discrimination that people face in our justice system. Racial equity is an important issue and it's out there, and we need to have those conversations, those difficult conversations, time and time again. I will tell you, this General Assembly under the Republican leadership, they repealed the Racial Justice Act. I mean, thankfully, our courts are bringing things like that back, but we've got to fully restore things like the Racial Justice Act. There's bills right now in our committees in the North Carolina General Assembly, whether it's Hate Crime Prevention Act, whether it's looking at, decriminalization of things like marijuana, whether it's whether there's bills that begin to stop criminalizing children as young as 6 years old in our justice system. I mean, these are the types of bills that we need to bring to fruition to make sure that we help our country and our society and our state and the members of our society to be more productive members. But the reality is that the decision makers out there, they don't believe these are important issues, right? These are issues that affect every single individual at the end of the day. And it's things that we need to absolutely look at, and we need to come together and at least give these types of bills committee hearings, right? So we can have the conversations, so we can figure out whether these types of bills are good bills for our community or not, right? Or at least give them some sort of committee vote, right? To at least give it a floor debate. But the reality is right now, the folks that make the decisions in our North Carolina General Assembly, they don't even allow these types of conversations to happen, because you file bills like this, and I file bills like this time and time again, and they don't see the light of day, unfortunately. That's why we're working so hard right now. I'll tell you, and hopefully we can talk about the election a little bit. Right now in the North Carolina Senate, we've got to pick up 4 more seats, 6 seats in the House. We can do it. In 2018, we broke that Republican supermajority after a decade. I mean, these guys are so horrible. They were overriding their own Republican governor's vetoes at times. And I'm proud to tell you, before I came to the North Carolina Senate, the Republicans overrode Governor Cooper almost 23 times. Since I've been in the North Carolina Senate, with a bunch of fantastic freshmen who are energized and motivated to move our state forward, that number's down to 0 now. 0. So we've been able to stop a lot of dangerous bills, but we've still got to be able to make a lot of progress. And folks are going to determine that on election day.
So when you're saying there's some open seats, so I know with the COVID pandemic, it has put so much. I mean, and then it makes it so hard for people to really get, the candidates out there versus, the town hall meetings that we
Yeah.
used to have. So with some of the town hall meetings that have been kind of either canceled or nobody wanted to do, and a lot of stuff people forget about the Zoom meetings. So what exactly are you doing as an elected official to make sure that you still have a town hall meeting and engage the people that are in your district to let them know certain laws that'll be, coming through the pipeline, or just different thing that's in that area, or just as overall?
Miko, I will tell you, ever since COVID-19 hit, I have a number of hats. I'm a father of 3, 6-year-old, 4-year-old. We got a 10-month-old baby girl who I'm excited about is finally first taking her first couple of steps, right? I'm proud to be a public defender working public interest law, and I'm proud to be your state senator in the North Carolina Senate in Raleigh. So I wear a number of different hats, but I will tell you, I have been wearing the Zoom screen and this WebEx screen for months now. right? So, I mean, the great thing about it is that it's been able to bring people together and have a lot of conversations that no other people wouldn't otherwise have. So we've had a number of these conversations like we're having with you right now, and the folks that are listening with you. And we're going to continue to do this type of work. Look, I've said it before. If anybody wants to invite me to any platform to get engaged, to get informed, to ask questions, feel free to reach out to Meko. Reach out to me directly, info@mohammednc.com. I'm more than willing to work around my schedule so we can have these important conversations with you. But I will tell you, in 56 days, my friends, we have a lot of decision making to do in places like North Carolina, America. We finally have the opportunity in 56 days to finally say no to hatred and division, no to wealthy special interests before working families in North Carolina. We finally have the opportunity to say yes towards turning towards one another instead of building walls, right? Building walls of opportunity. We finally have an opportunity to say yes to restoring public education, yes to finally expanding access to healthcare, yes to genuine and real justice reform in North Carolina, yes for economic justice for so many families. So I'll tell you, when I'm not talking to you, Meko, when I'm not talking to other leaders in our community, when I'm not at work, when I'm not busy raising a family, I'm on the phones for you in our community, right? We're making phone calls to voters and talking about these real issues, because obviously we don't show up in people's doorsteps right now as we're dealing with a real global pandemic that some folks are in denial and not even taking it real. That's unfortunate. So we're out there, we're phone banking folks. We're having digital conversations on digital platforms like this, right? We're having discussions about these types of issues on our social media platforms. I'm reaching out time and time again to individual donors to support, your values and mine, so we can flip these 4 seats and elect Yvonne Hawley as our next lieutenant governor. So we can flip the next 6 seats in the North Carolina House. I'll tell you, in Mecklenburg County, the delegation here is very, very strong. We've got a strong bunch of public servants. I know all of them. They're committed to Charlotte. They care about issues like quality public schools. They care about justice reform. They care about protecting our environment. They care about economic justice for so many families. But the reality is, our delegation needs more help from other parts outside of Charlotte. So what we're doing is we've recruited a bunch of fantastic candidates from east to west North Carolina. We're supporting them financially. These folks are small business owners. They're educators. They're healthcare professionals. They're parents, and they're engaged in their very own communities, and they're informing the folks to make the best decisions for their community. So I'm pretty confident with the numbers that we've been seeing, Meko. I try not to get so excited about poll numbers, I'll tell you, because we've been disappointed before. But the numbers that I'm seeing right now, the fundraising that I'm seeing, the record fundraising for a lot of our candidates, grassroots campaign, I'm excited about the future in 2020. And the reality is, folks out there that are listening right now, every 10 years, whichever party's in control redraws the maps. There's something called redistricting. And whichever political party holds that pen will determine your future and mine, the future of our children, the future of our grandchildren for the next decade, right? You have the census coming up, which is going to determine our financial resources and fundings that we get from the federal government. It's going to determine our congressional representation. That's why 2020 is absolutely so critical that we get this election right. So I would urge folks to do whatever you can. Hopefully we can continue to have the conversations here about things that folks can do to get engaged, because we've got to take the majority in 2020.
So, so for people, okay, I'm sorry. So for people that are out on the grounds doing the get out the vote, and I know with the pandemic, we're pushing out the website, trying to get people to do it. So you as a senator, what's your take on, how big of a supporter are you with the voter registration, the GOTV, and what are you doing I know you say you're doing the phone banking, but outside of the phone banking, what are you doing to go a little like above and beyond to make sure people understand that this election is in dire and people need to vote?
That's a fantastic question, and that's why I'm so glad that you bring that up, because I'm excited to share with you. A lot of doom and gloom comes out of Raleigh in Washington, D.C. But in June, we did pass a bipartisan election bill, which I'm so proud to have supported, that now in North Carolina, for the first time ever, you can now request your absentee ballot electronically. North Carolina doesn't have universal mail like certain states like Oregon and Washington, universal mail-in voting. In places like North Carolina, you have to actually request your ballot. Now, before this election, you had to either use snail mail, where you send a form into your Board of Elections through the United States U.S. Postal Service, or you show up at your county Board of Elections, you fill out a form, and then they would send you your ballot. You'd have two witnesses that would have to sign off that you are saying who you are, and then you'd submit your ballot back through snail mail. So the fantastic thing about this bill is now, right? And let me just real quick, Nico, let me just explain to you why this is so critical. You know, in places like North Carolina, we're quickly approaching almost 200,000 individuals, a number that was unthinkable back in March, that have tested positive for COVID-19. We've got almost 1,000 people who are currently hospitalized. We've got almost 3,000 folks who have passed away because of COVID-19. And I will tell you, instead of focusing on real issues like supporting folks with utilities assistance or evictions assistance, or making sure that educators had personal protective equipment, all bills that I'm so proud to have been a primary sponsor of, our Republican-led legislature focused on only simply reopen North Carolina. Let's have mass gatherings. Let's open up the amusement parks. Let's open up the gyms, because they don't believe in the science and data. That is the type of stuff that we did. We came up with solutions like offering loans to individuals instead of coming up with actual grants. Look, folks are already in debt. They don't need more debt. They need genuine help to make sure that their business is thriving. But this is the type of representation you get in Raleigh. But one of the good things that they did in Raleigh back in June was that they passed this bipartisan elections law bill, which now will allow you, instead of using snail mail, you can go online right now today to the North Carolina Board of Elections website, and you can request your absentee ballot. And once you get that ballot, we've been able to reduce the witness requirement down from 2 to 1, which is huge because not every household has 2 additional individuals there. We want you to stay safe and healthy. And Meko, the reason I'm so concerned about it, and I want to share, and I'm so glad I get to talk about this on this platform, is that we don't know what's going to happen in 56 days, right? People can show up to the polls, God forbid, and if God forbid, folks are going to be, causing chaos, saying, hey, I have COVID. You're going to see precincts shut down. Or God forbid, during early voting, you're going to see precincts shut down. People are going to have to clean things up. You're going to see massive long lines like you've seen in places like Kentucky and Georgia. And I don't want that for North Carolina. I will tell you, you know as well as I do, we've been out at the polls.
Yes.
And it's our senior citizens. It's our senior citizens. They are our vulnerable population. These are the folks that are dedicated to our democracy, and they're democracy heroes. But right now, the Board of Elections is still asking folks to step up and volunteer as poll workers. The bill that passed allows, for the first time ever, you don't necessarily have to live in the precinct that you live in to be a poll worker at that polling site, which is great. So now younger folks, other individuals can step up and get involved at different precincts to make sure that our election runs smoothly. That's one. Number two, I, for one, have individually, I've been fundraising as much as I can. It's not easy calling people and begging for their dollars, right? But I've been reaching out to folks as much as possible because we're working on essentially a no-contact field program. We're trying to show up to individuals' mailboxes. We're surgically targeting individuals and telling them, guess what? This great bill passed, right? And I don't want you getting sick. At the same time, I want you to have an insurance policy. And that insurance policy is go ahead and request your ballot. You can still vote at an early voting site. You can still vote at your local precinct on election day, but go ahead and request that absentee ballot form just in case. And the best thing about it, because I know many of folks are concerned, they don't want to trust the post office because this president's talked about defunding the post office as well. But the great part about this bill is you can take your ballot, your absentee ballot, and you could submit it to any early voting site in the county you live in. You can also take it yourself to the county board of elections, which is fantastic. So I would urge your viewers today to go to the North Carolina Board of Elections website, get yourself an insurance policy, because you're going to be mad at yourself if you're standing in massive long lines. I'm going to do it because I'm ready to get rid of this president. We've got to bring change all the way from the White House down to our state house and even our courts, because our life literally depends on it. So go ahead and request your absentee ballot. Otherwise, I need you to stand in that line, rain or shine, to vote on November 3rd or early vote.
When you say insurance policy, we don't want nobody to go up there and start talking about life insurance.
No, I'm just saying, look, just in case. It's like a backup. Request that absentee ballot. If you don't, if you say, you know what, if you and your wife, like my wife and I, look, I love to vote. I generally vote on election day. I send everybody else to go early vote. For some reason, I've always loved voting on election day. But look, the reality is I have that opportunity. I have that privilege. My employer is generally flexible with me on election day, but not everybody has those opportunities. So go early vote if you can. But at the same time, I'm calling it an insurance policy because at the end of the day, we need folks to vote. And especially our seniors, I don't want anybody to get sick. I don't want problems to happen. We're concerned about how many poll workers are going to be there or not. So those are real issues. So if you go ahead and request your absentee ballot, you can still vote. If you don't want to use it, you can just rip it up and tear it away. It's essentially spoiled by the Board of Elections, and you can still go early vote. You can vote at the Board of Elections. Now, don't do what our president's telling you to do, right? The games that this man plays, talking about go ahead and vote absentee ballot and go ahead and vote at the polls too, because, quote, he wants to see how the system works. No, that is a crime. That is illegal. And let's remind my folks out there that are listening on the right when they talk about voter fraud. It's not Democrats that are pushing voter fraud. We saw it in the 9th Congressional District 2 years ago, and we see the president of the United States, telling folks to commit a felony. So don't do it. Vote one time, but make sure you do it and vote.
Right. I think Charlene has a question.
Charlene, what's up?
Thank you. For those who do not know, I am part of the African American caucus. So I have a question. When you have politicians or elected officials or candidates come and speak in front of predominantly African American organizations, we have an issue with great speeches, saying what you will do, bringing up a whole lot of great avenues of we can, and we will do. Now, as a politician, and sir, I really respect you, but when you come and stand before the Black Political Caucus or the African American Caucus or any of those other areas, people are looking for hope. And you can say hope, you can spell hope, you can write it backwards. But at the end of the day, how will you be able to say to us, as an African-American woman, who look for hope in our elected officials, what can you say to us that's going to be different? Because we hear the same things over and over and over again, but
I'm with you. And this is what the problem is, why people don't want to vote sometimes, right? I have these conversations all the time where people are like, well, nothing's going to change. It's going to say the same old. And I'm sorry, right? But as well as I do, government is a process, and work is hard work, and it takes absolute time. And for example, I just shared with you, right? You might think right now in North Carolina, we haven't been able to make progress. But I will tell you, if it wasn't for the folks that are committed to justice in our state, if it isn't for the individuals that are committed to equity, if it wasn't for the folks that are committed to our state's well-being, if it wasn't for the folks that are committed to a strong public education for all children, in 2018, we would not have been able to break that Republican supermajority. And I'll tell you, Charlene, you would be much more angrier today, because the type of bills that these men and women come up with on the other side of the aisle, they're absolutely dangerous bills. And they are not good news, whether it's defunding of our public education system, whether it's supporting more and more these big special corporate interests in our state. Keep in mind, North Carolina's got the lowest corporate tax rate in our country at 2.5%. If it was up to these folks, they would bring it down to zero. Well, if we bring it down to zero, Charlene, where's the money for public education? Where's the money going to come from our roads and infrastructure? Where's the money going to come to support folks who don't make enough money to purchase their own health insurance? And that's why they have to be on Medicaid. So that's my point. We've been able to stop a lot of dangerous things, and we're making progress, right? That's huge. After almost a decade, to be able to break a super majority, that's huge news. Now, like I just told you, we're continuing the work. There are folks out there who engage in the process. They're putting their blood, they're putting their sweat, they're putting their tears, they're putting all their time, their energy, their money to make sure that we flip our legislature in our state. They're working hard to send people like Chief Justice Sherry Beasley, our first African-American Chief Justice, phenomenal individual, a former public defender like myself, who understands and sees people, just like Judge Ricky McCoy Mitchell would say, right? Not just cases, but sees faces. I mean, that's the type of progress we can make. But what I will tell you, my life's journey has always been public service. I will tell you, as a person of color myself, right? I'm Indian American, and my parents have always raised my siblings and I. It's never about just you. It's not about the individual. I never got into this because I wanted to be called a state senator. I saw the genuine problems at the ground. I just mentioned to you earlier, when I see 6, 12, 18-year-olds, young people being pushed out of our classrooms into jail cells, that's a problem for me. When I see mothers that can't even afford to feed their children, much less pay their court fees and fines, that's a problem for me. When I look at young men who are looking for second chances and opportunities and all they find is oppression, that's a problem for me. And you are more than welcome to go look at my legislative record and go to the North Carolina NC Ledge website. I've sponsored and co-sponsored and primarily sponsored over 166 bills in my first term only. And these are bills that speak to my values and your values, Ms. Henderson. So
How
I'm
many
going to
of them,
continue the fight and use my platform. What was that?
how many of them was passed?
So a good handful have passed, but again, you got to remember, what did I just tell you earlier? The Republican majority controls whether your bills are heard or not. And one of the biggest bills that I'm so proud of right now that affects, you just mentioned the African American community, right? Because I work with them, especially in the justice system, is the Second Chance Act that Meko herself came and campaigned for and lobbied for. That is a bill that I sponsored and it passed with bipartisan support. When it comes to another bill that I sponsored, when it comes to restoring our Court of Appeals, the Republicans had reduced the number of seats that we had on our Court of Appeals. That's another bill that I sponsored and it passed bipartisan 100%. So now we've been able to restore our judges because that's an equity issue, right? People deserve to have speedy trials. They can't be waiting forever on their appeals. So we've got to be able to have judges that are there ready and willing to hear these cases. So these are the type of things, obviously, big, bold things like that I've sponsored, like making sure we're raising the minimum wage. These guys won't let it happen right now. That's why I'm working hard to get rid of them, right? That's why it's easy for folks to think that there's no progress being made. But just you got to be an informed voter. You got to go look up your legislators, your city council folks to see how are they voting? Where do they stand on the issues?
And that was
Who's
the
endorsing
next
them?
question. Yeah. Do
Right?
you work closely? Do you work closely with the local politicians?
So I will tell you, Charlene, I'm the only legislator since I've been in the North Carolina Senate where I had forums. I wish you would have joined and attended, but we literally held town halls where we brought government to the people, right? And within my first term, I had town halls in different parts of the Senate district where we brought each individual's district city council representative, their county commissioner, and their state house representative and their state senator. We led that charge across the Senate district. So I work closely with all of our local leaders, whether it's our school board members, whether it's our mayor, whether it's our city council folks. We often have listening sessions with them where we listen to their concerns and they share ours. When it came to what happened with CMPD, their use of chemical agents in Charlotte, we had a meeting at 1:00 at night with Chief Jennings and the mayor and members from the city council to figure out what's happening, what's going on, right? I proposed solutions to our chief and said, look, cities like Denver, right? Other cities in Seattle, they're deciding not to use chemical agents, chief. So why not in places like Charlotte? So look, you're gonna see drastic changes if and when you give me the opportunity of working in the majority. But I'm gonna be very frank with folks. We're not gonna take the majority if folks don't roll up their sleeves and make the calls and text messages that they need to do. If they don't contribute whatever they can, right? Nobody says that you have to contribute thousands of dollars. If you can give $5, $1, a change, it doesn't matter. Every dollar counts. Bringing change is hard work. So make sure you are holding elected officials accountable. Make sure you're having the community conversations. Make sure you continue to have platforms like this where you bring individuals like me to the people and vice versa. I'm honored and privileged to do this job. And that's why time and time again, the African American community has been an overwhelming supporter of mine. Time and time again have been endorsed by the Black Political Caucus and even the African American Caucus of Mecklenburg County. So I'm honored to have your support.
So when we speak of the Juneteenth and you seen the meeting and the little feedback they had early on the meeting, I mean, I'm just in the community and a lot of people have issues with what happened on the Juneteenth event on Beatty's-Ford Road. And a lot of the families feel very much displaced and they don't feel like they got the right answers or enough answers. And, from us being in the community on those different sides of towns, we look at.
Miko, I'm sorry, you were breaking up. I missed
Can
your
you hear
voice
me
was
now?
going in and out for me. Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
yes.
Okay, so people were looking at a lot of things that could have been done on that date of the event that happened on Beatty-Ford Road. One of my concerns come in is they give crisis response, or they say they was given training. No one was out there, period, to give no form of emotional support to people that were victims, people that were family members, or people that was just in a state of emergency, just shocked, just discombobulated about the situation. That was one of the issues. Then you have the fact of them saying cameras, there's no video footage, when there's so many different cameras that are on Beatty-Ford Road that they have used. And they also fail to realize, they have even said it themselves, that when, I think a while back, last year, when it was so many strands of shootings and they was trying to connect different sides of town shootings, they were using cameras. They actually captured a shooting on Beatty-Ford Road right there in front of the Food Lion, and that somebody got shot in Food Lion. So it's just ironic that on this particular day that you got no cameras, that only DOT control from the lights, on the street lights, from even Food Lion, the bank, the ATM machines, the personal businesses. It's too many camera footage, even the firehouse, even from the firefighters telling people that they were looking at people live feeds and also watching the cameras that they have at the fire station and looking at everything that's going on. So when you look at family members, they have lost loved ones, or family members that are dealing with someone that's trying to recover from what happened on Juneteenth, they don't have no answers. And to say that they're relying on social media is kind of like a spit in the face. It's almost like they didn't have to put their hands and physically shoot, taser, chokehold, or beat to death, or say they committed suicide in custody. They didn't have to say that when they just basically just didn't care.
Yeah.
You know,
have you just real quick, just wondering, have you spoken to Councilman Graham, I believe, who represents that area directly about this issue? Just wondering. Charlena makes it sound like, I guess not, or maybe you have.
I mean, well, my thing is, my uncle lived in that community. That was my cousin Kelly Miller that got killed. But my thing is, right, it shouldn't be, the family shouldn't have to really reach out to Malcolm Graham.
No, of course. No. I was asking if you had heard, if he had mentioned anything to you about it.
Well, look,
outside of the meeting that was publicized today, and everybody from every side of the town, after they seen that meeting today, they were very much dissatisfied.
Well, Meko, look, a lot of folks have been talking about, when we have this discussion about defunding the police, essentially it's about reallocation of resources. That's what it really comes down to, right? And we obviously need to, instead of having this massive like military industrial complex of investment in the local police department, we need to invest in making sure we have good police officers who are actively and properly investigating folks so individuals get justice at the end of the day. So I'm sure CMPD is more than capable of doing the research that they need to and the due diligence that they need to make sure that they find out exactly who did what and how it all happened. When you mentioned cameras necessarily, I'll just tell you real quick. I mean, even when it comes to body cam footage, when it's officer involved issues, our legislature, again, Charlena, just so you know, created more problems. Essentially a poll tax, where now individuals have to go petition a Superior Court judge. I've spoken to our mayor and our city council about, hey, did you see this video? What happened? And I'm told things like, well, we're not allowed to see the video until a judge clears it. I mean, that's something right there that a General Assembly did in, I think, 2017, 2017, I believe it happened. I mean, that is essentially a poll tax where now you're essentially keeping folks out from transparency and basic accountability to see what happened. I mean, those are the type of reforms that we need, because these videos need to be immediately accessible to the public, whether it's officer involved or, Meko, what you're talking about, incidents where the police need to get involved, subpoena, where the prosecutor needs to subpoena whoever they need to subpoena to get these videos and figure out exactly what they saw, because the community deserves answers. So I appreciate you reaching out to me And I will for sure, when I have my conversations with our council leaders, express your concerns about this particular incident.
Yeah. And with the property tax assessment, and I have to say this, we have a lot of seniors, and one of my issues that I hate so bad is that we have so many different resources that are for elderly people, senior citizens, I will say. And my problem is why no one is really putting it out there to let the seniors know, versus they got different programs that can help with seniors when they're going through different things, if they have limited education, limited resources, even with their property taxes, telling them to go talk to a tax assessor, get it reevaluated, see what program they qualify for. My only issue of just listening to people in the community is no one are telling them, so they're stuck and they're going through foreclosure court because no one has said, go see a tax assessor and go get your taxes reevaluated. So how do that make you feel, as a senator, when you're hearing that, on the bottom tier are not doing what it takes to protect our seniors?
So Meko, when we had a number of town halls before COVID hit, I will tell you, this is an issue that I directly talked about. We had folks come from the county tax assessor's office, and they talked about the various programs to members in our community that are available. I invited our county commissioner, Commissioner Elite came, Commissioner Dunlap came when I was in the university area. And we had these actual conversations with my constituents that I could communicate to, and folks that showed up to find out the resources. But you're absolutely right. Education is empowerment, right? At the end of the day, if folks don't know about the resources that are available to them, that's a disservice. I'm a trial attorney at the public defender's office, but I spend a lot of my time as a middleman providing resources to so many individuals that are struggling, whether it's figuring out how to get their driver's license, whether it's figuring out housing, where they're going to stay tomorrow, whether it's figuring out, hey, how can I get substance abuse treatment? And we've talked about issues that you're bringing up when it comes to property taxes. And another is, Ms. Henderson, just so you know, I'm a proud sponsor of a bill that stops pushing out of our seniors because, the reality is gentrification is a real issue in places like Charlotte, and folks are not able to stay in their homes, and that's a real issue. So one of my bills increases the income threshold. And also one of my bills that I was working towards was reducing the age so we can help more individuals stay in their homes, because the county's property taxes should not be the reason why you're pushed out of your home. So those are simple solutions we're looking at. My simple solution, because the counties freaked out when I proposed this bill, especially the smaller counties, are like, Senator Mohammed, now you're taking our money away because the General Assembly's not helping us out. All right, and the county commission's having to step up, for example, like we do in Charlotte, where we're supplementing teacher pay. For example, counties freaked out, and rightfully so. But I produced a bill which basically had the North Carolina Department of Revenue track the money essentially that was being forgiven to folks so they can stay in their home, and basically through the general fund of our state's budget, send that money back to the counties. But of course, the powers that be wouldn't allow that bill to see the light of day. And I actually got a little bit of bipartisan support and some folks from the House with Representative John Hardister, who's actually interested in it. But it's tough. It's absolutely frustrating. I'll tell you, someone who takes time away from my work and my family to go and rally, and these folks don't even want to listen sometimes. It is so frustrating, I'll tell you. I mean, these folks, I'll tell you, are hell-bent on destroying the very foundations of our neighborhoods and our schools. And again, I'm going to continue to do my part to change these individuals, because we need the resources, Meko, like you talked about, so we can educate our community members about what resources are available. I mean, I talked to you about COVID-19. I can't tell you how many Zoom meetings I've been in where we're just talking about how folks can get unemployment benefits, right? For example, or how they can figure out how to get housing assistance, or how they can reach out for these bridge loans so they can support their small business. Because a lot of folks were left out of those PPP loans, unfortunately.
Most definitely.
You're muted, Meko.
How can the community support that bill, or what do we as the community need to do to support that? Because I do hate to see our seniors. I mean, the homeless population is already another issue, but we don't need to have living stable people with already limited income being pushed out. Then the homeless population is going to be way worse than what we have. So how can the community help you advocate that bill, push for that bill, and what do we need to do as far as maybe, you know, later on connecting, and when it's time to lobby, you know, what do we need to do?
So, Meko, just like you came and were instrumental in lobbying for our bill, the Second Chance Act, I need you to get a group of folks together and come lobby these legislators about bills like expanding the homestead exemption for our seniors, for example. Again, the reality is, unless we flip this North Carolina legislature, it's gonna be very tough to get these bold progressive ideas passed. I'm just gonna be very frank with you, because I'm not somebody who's gonna give you false hope at the end of the day. And I'm not somebody who doesn't file or fight for things just because it's not possible at the same time. I mean, that's the whole reason why I decided to be in the North Carolina Senate, because I wanted to take those faces of my clients, the social workers, the teachers, the kids that I've seen in the classrooms with me every single day when I'm in the community room and on the floor of the North Carolina Senate. And that's what we continue to do. So I'm going to refile that bill. I'm going to even try to make that better if and when the people of North Carolina Senate District 38 send me back on November 3rd. And hopefully you will have sent me more reinforcements in the North Carolina General Assembly. So what I would do is, I don't know how many of your listeners today are from outside of Mecklenburg County, but if you are, folks out there that are listening, I need you to reach out to your local legislator, whether you're in Cabarrus County, Gaston County, Forsyth County, Wake County, wherever you are, and you're listening to this amazing platform with Meko and Charlene. I need you to have this conversation with your local elected officials, and I need you to tell them to push for expanding the homestead exemption, so we can keep our seniors in their home. Look, they've worked hard. They deserve to they deserve to retire in dignity. So I'm going to do what I can to flip these seats, and I'm going to refile that bill, continue to make it better. I've had these discussions with our delegation chair, Representative Kelly Alexander. We talked about this bill at the Black Political Caucus as well. So I'm going to continue to champion it. I just need folks that will let it see the light of day.
Okay. Charlene? Okay.
What's up, Charlene? You got another question for me?
Nope, I'm just sitting back taking notes. I just wanted to actually, and thank you, Meko, for allowing me to be a part of this distinguished conversation. And hopefully and prayerfully within the next quarter, we'll be able to have you back, because our goal is to make sure that we stay on top of the issues and see how we can help those who are, you know, at least looking out for our agenda as well. I know it's an overall, you know, platform, but for African American people, it's just been a little rough. And so we're looking to, you know, see how we can help each other. So we'll be coming back with some conversation, you know, later on, just to see how everything is going and see how we can further your agenda.
Absolutely, folks. Go ahead,
Well, I would love to say, before you do close out, you can give your handle, as we say, your social media stuff, how people can follow you and also get a glimpse of the bill. And I know there hasn't been too many fundraising events and a lot of that stuff. So if a person wanted to contribute to your campaign, if you put that information out, then that gives them an opportunity to, one, follow you. And if they have any questions, they can personally inbox you, or, you know, however, is two people that are in the community, Charlene and I. But if they want to reach out to you, at least getting that information. And also, if they have any concerns, and me and Charlene will be getting back with you on some other stuff with the justice reform, because that's one of our biggest focuses. That we'll do that offline and we'll have that conversation. But most definitely give your information, how they can follow you, and how to donate.
Absolutely. Well, Meko and Charlene, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm so honored and privileged to be here with you to have these important discussions that we did today. As far as my social media handles for the folks that are listening out there, because again, I try to do my best to keep folks informed about what's happening in Raleigh and our community on there consistently. So you can go to on Twitter, M Mohammed, like my last name, if you see it on the screen, MOHAMMED NC. Again, M Mohammed NC is my Twitter and Instagram handle. If you want to find our campaign page on Facebook, just type my first and last name, Mujtaba Mohammed. And I believe this is North Carolina Senate, and it'll show up. So feel free to like and follow to stay informed, stay engaged, to also hold me accountable if you have any questions. If you want to reach out to me on my legislative email, you can always email me at my first name, mujtaba.mohammed@ncledge.net. I've got this wonderful young man with me named Jordan Lopez there, who's my legislative assistant, who also helps me stay on top of a lot of these emails, because we've been inundated, especially since COVID hit, with unemployment, housing evictions, a whole host of issues. Like, people have genuine problems. So we're trying to do everything we can to help folks. So be patient with us, because we can't ever keep that inbox empty. Constantly getting emails. So email there. And if you want to learn a little bit more about me, feel free to visit my website at mohammednc.com as well, where you can see my legislative platform. We've got a couple of videos on there as well. But what I will tell you folks is that, look, I mentioned to you earlier, many of you heard, and you've heard it again, North Carolina is the biggest battleground in 2020. The path to the White House and the United States Senate runs directly through North Carolina. North Carolina is the only state in the country which has a competitive race for the president of the United States. I believe Joe Biden has either been tied or leading in the polls against Donald Trump consistently. The Democrat Cal Cunningham has been up 9 to 12 points over the incumbent Republican Tom Tillis consistently. And Governor Cooper, who I'm so honored and served with and consider a friend, has done a phenomenal job when it comes to making sure our community is safe, healthy, and supported. Because we could have easily turned into Texas or Florida or Arizona and North Carolina if it was up to the folks that I serve with in the North Carolina legislature. So we've got to be able to send these folks back. And of course, send my good friend, Chief Justice Sherry Beasley, back to the North Carolina Supreme Court. She's our first African-American woman. Look, I told you earlier, Meko and Charlene, I have a 10-month-old baby girl. And she's my beautiful daughter, and I'm so honored and privileged to be her father. But I want for her what I want for my sons. And I want her to see young and amazing and vibrant individuals like Chief Justice Beasley. And I too want them to follow in those steps, want her to follow in those footsteps of being a public servant and serving our community. So I'm honored and proud that she has individuals like Chief Justice Beasley to see, an amazing Black woman. So we're excited about that. But I will leave you with this, is that if you genuinely care about expanding access to healthcare, if you care about genuine justice reform, if you care about making sure that every single child of North Carolina has an opportunity at making their future better, if you believe in giving our families economic justice, because in places like Charlotte, I'll tell you, you got to work 103 hours a week just to afford a 2-bedroom apartment at minimum wage. That is a terrible injustice. You have the opportunity to change that. So feel free to visit my website, mohammednc.com, sign up to volunteer, contribute whatever you can to help us flip the North Carolina Senate, because it's now or never, and it's all hands on deck. So please go vote. 56 days to Election Day. I love each and every one of you. Thank you.
And we appreciate you coming out and getting this information to us. And we will follow up with you. And thank you.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Alrighty. Take care.
Right.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Right. Is it us?
Okay, wait a minute, end our meeting. So, I'm gonna leave it, and then I'm running out the door to another meeting, and I can get you on the phone.
Okay, we're done. So this thing's still recording. So we're gonna stop it.
Yes, ma'am. All right, that was a wonderful meeting, and we look forward to many, many more follow-ups. Good job. You did wonderful. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in a minute.
Thank you for coming. Good night.